Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show for Friday. It is September the 19th, which is a pretty important day in my family's history. At least it has been for the last couple of years. So we're going to be talking a little bit about a personal story, which I don't always do. We're going to talk about the budget dispute and the fact that we're about to see more of the status quo. You don't even have to be a prophet. You don't have to be Nostradamus like Tom Massey is, and you don't have to be a prognosticator or a prophet to see that our government is going to do what our government always does, which is that they kick along a continuing resolution and they try not to do their jobs because this is the way that our country is governed right now. Our country is governed by people who don't want to do the job they're hired to do. They'd rather do a bunch of hearings, like to show up and virtue signal to you. They'd like to tell you all the things that they agree with you on and then not do anything about it. So we're going to talk a bit about that. The thing that struck me is that there was an interview that Senator Kennedy did, and I think it's on CNN. I've got the clip for you to play in a little bit. He went on and said that social media and our media environment has lowered the cost of being an a-hole. The burden to entry to step out and say awful things to complete strangers is very, very low. So your ability to be a publisher with almost no work on your own end. You don't need to go out there and buy a printing press. You don't need to go out there and have a website that you draw traffic to. The website already exists. And if you say something that is appropriately inflammatory enough, if you can be mean enough or nasty enough, then you can get your message to a lot of people. And even if you can't get it to a lot of people, you probably can get it to the person that you're aiming at. I get my fair share of that. I mostly shake it off. I think it's kind of sad how many people are out there on social media that think that they, with a picture of their pet, matter. In other words, that somebody that doesn't know them is going to take these things and take them seriously. But they do weigh on you after a period of time. And so I've got 3 years of experience now in this space. And I'm going to talk about kind of the weight of what that does and why it continues on. Last night, we had a really nice call-in show, despite some technical difficulties, which didn't exist prior to our call-in show. If you guys have never joined our call-in program, let me just tell you what it is. We do a subscribers-only option where people who are subscribed to our locals channel, subscribed over on X, and subscribed to our YouTube channel can call in. And we just talk about what you guys want to talk about. And I had everything working just fine. We've done almost 50 of those shows. And for the last 2 of them, the phones just didn't work despite no changes in settings. We actually did end up getting through it and we actually got it all done. If you guys want to catch the replay, you can find all the replays of all of our regular podcasts over on Spotify and go to KyleSeraphinShow.com. It's the easiest and probably the best technology to use. If you want to be part of the call-in programs, go to locals. You can join our little community over there. It's pretty awesome. It's a bunch of really great people, KyleSeraphin.com. And yeah, if you're watching anywhere else, make sure that you are liking these videos. Make sure you're sharing with folks. And if you want to subscribe to the channels, YouTube and Rumble, I appreciate when you guys do that. We're going to do a quick read for our sponsor, Cove Pure, who's brand new to our program, and I think fits in really well with our values. And then we're going to get into, like I said, a kind of a personal story, but I don't think it's going to be foreign to you guys, and I think it'll be interesting. Let's first start with the folks that pay some of the bills here. Cove Pure, COVEPURE.com/Kyle is the website. Think about government status quo always kind of being awful. I tell you that government's the worst solution, including when it's the only solution. People in charge won't fix potholes, but you're going to trust them with one of the most important things you do, which is drink water. Almost always, you're going to find out that drinking water, it's not exactly the priority of the people around you, whether you're in Flint, Michigan, and you have lead or heavy metals or rust in your pipes coming out, like straight poison out of the tap, or whether you were at Kirtland Air Force Base like me and you were drinking arsenic and a bunch of other stuff, finding out that they were putting jet fuel into the ground on accident. We have a Cove Pure system. It's actually set up for my kids to be able to get unlimited water upstairs. I fill it, and then they push the button, and they can fill up their water bottles, and they're constantly staying hydrated with something that's good. The problem is a lot of America's water supply is a cocktail of heavy metals and toxins and their fallout from corroded pipes that should have been replaced decades ago, or there's lead exposure, or there's all kinds of pharmaceuticals in there. So it either tastes terrible, like you're chewing on a car battery, or in my case, there's sulfur in everything. The possibility of brain damage and cancer and birth defects, all the other kind of nasty stuff that's out there, but you can fix it, and you can get something like Cove Pure's Clear Wave technology, removing 99.9% of contaminants. They've got filters for lead and PFAs and pharmaceuticals. You don't have to have a plumber. You don't need to do any drilling. You just plug it into your countertop, set the temperature, which is really cool, by the way. It's a really nice, elegant unit that will change all this stuff up, and you can just punch it out there in the preferred size that you want. It also tells you about the amount of raw contaminants, which is kind of nice to be able to see. It's measuring it for you. In my case, we have kind of a yellow film because there's a ton of sulfur that comes out in the groundwater where we're at. Don't wait around for the government to solve the problem. They won't. I've called. Even in my own area, they do not care. Go to covepure.com/KYLE. Again, covepure.com/Kyle. You're going to save $200 off their machine right now while supplies last. You can take back your family's health, and you can take back the power over your own drinking water. If you guys do not have water filtration, it is a game changer. The taste is the easiest thing to recognize, and it is a big deal. And then the safety aspects of it are sort of beyond compare. You can't even tell, but you guys have been probably drinking something nasty for a long time if you don't use this. Check them out, covepure.com/KYLE. Let's do today's program starting right now. So good morning to the folks that are in our chat, and good afternoon to those of you who are listening a little bit after the fact. I want to welcome everybody to this September the 19th. I find sometimes when my energy level is low that the show makes more sense to some people. I don't know if that's always the case, but let me kind of give you a little reflection. This has been weighing on me personally in the wake of a horrible assassination, a husband and a father who was, by all accounts, a good man. And then people hated him. And I'll tell you something, being hated is actually really easy to do in America. If you say something and stay on the same message, there is going to be a concentrated group of people that will turn against you. Some of those people will initially be very favorable to what you have to say. And eventually they'll tire of it because they'll say, why do you keep saying the same thing? And the answer is because the same thing keeps happening. We're not fixing the problems. For those of you that are watching right now and not just listening, I'm showing you a picture of my house. It was my house until September the 19th of 2022. So that's going to take you back 3 years. And 3 years ago today, I took the last little bit of stuff that we had and put it in the back of, like whatever trash needed to be cleared out of the garage, threw it in the back of my pickup truck. And my wife and I, she drove the minivan and I drove our old truck down to the title office in Las Cruces, New Mexico, and we signed away that home that we had bought. And it was really beautiful, folks. I mean, it was, if you can't see it, it was a stunning view. The view was unbelievable, actually. This is the view. That was my backyard. Every morning I used to get up and I was grateful to be in it. It was relatively inexpensive for the kind of thing that you got. We were on 2 acres. We had space. You could see how far away our neighbors were. We had wildlife in the backyard. We had scorpions and vinegaroons, and we had tarantulas and bats, which is all kind of weird, but we had jackrabbits and mule deer. We had coyotes that would run around in the arroyo. It was really a neat place. That stone wall that you're seeing on the back there was a place my kids would climb up on. They were learning how to use it. They were little. So they would climb up on that wall and they'd walk around and they'd go see, all of our terrain, all the sort of domain of the Seraphin family there. And it was safe. We had cool neighbors that were super nice people. Some of them were government employees and some of them were retirees that had spent time in the military and law enforcement. It was just a like-minded group of people. There were American flags all over the place when I'd go for a jog in the morning. And we went and we signed it away to a really nice family who's living in it now, as far as I know. But that was my kid's home. And I had 3 of the 4 children at that point in time. And we had all the things that you'd hope to have out there. Like I said, it was in Las Cruces, New Mexico, so it's not a place that Americans generally are fighting to get into. But on the back patio out there, I had my first phone call with Dan Bongino. And I was preparing to sell the house at that time. And I asked him, I said, I'm about to put my life in your hands if I come and talk to you out loud. I'm going to change something about the way that I've been living for the last 40-something years. I'm going to expose myself to public scrutiny that I didn't much care to have. I didn't go looking for that. I didn't go want to be a public figure. That wasn't my goal. If I had, I promise you, I came from a family that my dad did media. So if I wanted to go out there and be on the radio, if I wanted to go out there and be on television, if that was something that I had a goal in my life, I would have at least had somebody to talk to about making it happen. It was never my idea. So here I am making this decision with Bongino on the phone. never met the guy like you guys, knew him from a podcast. And he made a promise that he was going to keep the story that I brought to him alive, like an activist, is his words. He said, I don't need the money. I don't need the clicks. I have generational wealth now. This was just before, or maybe just after the IPO of Rumble. And he's like, I got money for my kids and my grandkids. So it's not about that. Turns out it might actually be about that. And so I went and signed the deed away to the home that we had. My family had no home. We had nowhere to live. We just had a message. And my wife and my kids packed up and they drove from Las Cruces out to my folks' place in Payson, Arizona, which is, a solid 6 hours away. Just drove off into the mountains and went to go stay in a 3-bedroom house with our family of 5 and my parents. That was a little bit tough. And then I drove south. I drove to the airport in El Paso, and I got on a plane, and I flew to Dallas, and I got stuck there overnight. And while I was stuck there, and this is kind of interesting for some of you who don't know the backstory, I got a phone call from folks at Project Veritas. And the folks at Veritas said, we heard that you're thinking about going and doing an interview with Dan Bongino. And I said, yeah, I am. They bought my ticket and I agreed to go out and speak with him. And they said, well, we want you to cancel the interview. We'd like you to back away from that and let us tell your story. And we're going to raise lots of money for you. And we're going to we're going to go out there and promote your story so big. And I said, no, I can't do that. I cannot walk away because I gave my word to somebody. I said, I'm going to fly out there and I'm going to have an interview with someone because I said I was going to go do that. And that's why I'm in the situation that I'm in right now, because I said something and I'm going to keep doing that thing. I said that the government would become my enemy if they decided to make my family lose their home, if they decided to kick me out of a job that they had no right to kick me out of and not follow due process. And so they did. They created an enemy of me in that way. And the other piece of it is that when I give my word to somebody and say, I'm going to take a plane ticket, I'm going to fly out there and do an event, I'm going to go out and sit and talk to somebody, I'm going to do an interview, then I'm going to do that. And they said, well, we're going to have James O'Keefe call you personally to talk you out of this. And I said, you can have James call me, but it doesn't matter because I'm not going to change my mind because I've already given my word. That's the reason why I'm in this situation in the first place. I told the federal government that I would not be taking a shot for COVID. And that was it. That was the end of it. There was no negotiation after that point. That's the way that I work. Flew out, didn't get much sleep that night, if you can imagine. I ended up flying out in the morning, got to Miami, got in the car. Their driver picked me up, drove me up to a studio, which was not Dan's studio. If you guys ever saw the first interview that he and I sat down in, it was a rental studio. We just sat down there and we had never met before. We were wearing the same types of clothes. He was wearing a black t-shirt and a pair of blue jeans and some brown shoes. And I was wearing a black t-shirt and a pair of blue jeans and some brown boots. We were almost identically dressed. He threw on a blazer. We were sitting there with his producer, Guy, and we had a 2-hour conversation with no prep, none at all. And that was the first podcast. That was the first public thing I ever did. I flew home. It hadn't gone public yet. And I got on the phone when I went to the airport to fly home. And I was texting with a guy named Mike Glover, who's a former Green Beret and had dealt with a lot of FBI scrutiny. He had been canceled. We're talking about cancel culture this last couple weeks again, last 2 weeks. So Mike Glover had been removed from his position. He had lost modifications or monetizations rather on some of the websites he was working. And so I texted him and I said, do you have any advice? Because my name is about to be very public. And I have a sensation that it's going to be pretty aggressively promoted. People are looking to find out about the FBI. And he said, nobody can tell you what it's like to do what you're doing. Only you can. So hang in there. And so I responded to him. I said, you're kind of saying like the man in the arena thing, right? And he said, yeah, it's the man in the arena. So I'm sympathetic to people who are in the arena, who maybe we don't know all their story. But being in the arena means that we get to know a little bit about what it's like to be in the arena. And I know some things behind the scenes that many of you will not be able to see. Again, I know the sort of dishonesty and the sort of, there's a lot of treachery for folks that are in media. And it's not a particularly honorable group of folks that I continue to find out. And I found this out in many ways. And this morning, kind of reflecting on the fact that I'm in a rental house and I don't own the home that my kids are growing up in right now, and that many of them don't even remember it. They don't remember New Mexico. They don't remember what a little palace we had there. It really was. I mean, for the amount of money we spent on it, we couldn't afford it today. And I went to go look and see, hey, can we own a house this year? My wife and I made that decision, and the answer is not without doubling or tripling the cost of our rental. What we can rent for. So, like many of you, I experienced the same financial things. There's no rich and powerful situation here behind the show. When I show you this screen, I'm showing you the entirety of the Kyle Seraphin Show and everybody here. When I say we, I just mean me and my wife. That's pretty much it. That's what's going on. So that hits me a little bit differently today. And I'm sharing you that because people ask questions like, well, how did Dan betray you? Well, he gave me his word and then he didn't follow up on it. People get mad about, why don't you agree with James O'Keefe? Because James O'Keefe has acted like a slime ball since I've met him. The first time I met him was in Washington, D.C., and he had me sit in a hotel lobby. And I'm going to tell you right now, I was literally and actually scared for my life, probably for the first time since I went to dive school and went swimming in the middle of dark waters where I couldn't see the bottom and I couldn't see in front of me. The scariest thing that I had ever done professionally was flying into Washington, D.C. to talk to James O'Keefe in May of 2022, knowing that the FBI would not want what I was doing. And then he had the audacity to call me and tell me back out on a thing you already gave your word on. So there are a lot of dishonorable people. I don't have a lot of respect for them. We're going to be talking about some of those people that I think are also dishonorable only because they gave us their word publicly. And so let's talk about that. Usually what I do is I kind of push the main story that I think is most important towards the end. I'm actually going to lead with it today. And we don't always do this. And maybe it's just because of the mood that I'm in. I'm just going to read this to you. As of September 2025, the U.S. national debt has increased approximately $4.37 trillion since Mike Johnson became the Speaker of the House on October 25th of 2023. Since Mike Johnson became Speaker, we have an increase of nearly $4.5 trillion in our national debt. This is a guy who stated publicly, who ran and campaigned to his colleagues on the idea that he was going to do single issue appropriation bills, that he was going to take control of federal spending, that he was going to fix the problem, and he was going to be a conservative, not a Republican, a conservative. The national debt under Speaker Johnson, it was $33.16 trillion on the day that he was sworn in as Speaker. And as of yesterday, it was $37.53 trillion. That is an awful lot of money. Before September 11th of 2001, we were still under the $10 trillion mark, as I understand it. And we've done almost half the damage it took us 200 years to get to that point, over 200 years. And we did 50% of that damage since Mike Johnson has been the Speaker. Is that not wild? Is that not just disheartening? How much the status quo goes? Look at these happy faces. This is an article that was written in the Texas Tribune the day that he was elected. And there's quotes here from a bunch of different Texas representatives saying that the Texas delegation is really happy to have him. You can see Boebert there. See some of these other characters. They're all smiles. Everybody's happy. Opportunity. He's a deeply religious conservative, they say. And he won the support of the party's factions because he's promised to do the thing nobody has ever done. And then he chose to be a guy who also did not do it. Somebody sent me this yesterday. It's a milk carton, for those of you that are not watching. Although if you're watching over on Spotify and you're just listening right now, you can actually hit the button and switch right over to the video and see this picture. It's Mike Johnson. It's on a milk carton. You remember those? We used to have milk cartons when people disappeared, when kids would go missing. They'd run away, or maybe someone kidnapped them, or who knows what happened. Mike Johnson, the one that we heard was going to be the Speaker of the House, has been missing for quite a while now. In fact, I'm not even sure he ever showed up. It's funny to go back in time and read this. It wasn't that long ago, October of 2023. At that point in time, I'd been in the public eye for over a year. And that's interesting as well, because that feels like I've been doing this forever now. Though those have been a long 3 years, folks. Winning the support of the entire Texas delegation reflected his popularity within an ideologically diverse Republican conference. The House Republicans burned through 3 Speaker nominees, each incapable of securing the party's full support. 2 Texans made formal bids, Pete Sessions, Roger Williams. Both of them didn't make it. And they ended up with this guy who had the least amount of experience in Congress and who supposedly was a rock solid conservative, socially conservative, and a fiscally conservative person. So he was going to be the right guy. Jim Jordan, some of the others had too many beefs with other people. He'd been in the theater too long. I think that's what happens. And it didn't turn out. This was in April of this year. Mike Johnson said to the people who were holding out on approving the budget, remove me if I don't keep my promises. Well, I'm pretty confident that we can actually already say that he hasn't kept his promises because the man didn't do what he said from day one. And this is why, as I continue to tell you guys in this expression of post-partisanism, I cannot get behind a party. I can't. Even the people that are the cheerleaders for the party, they kind of nauseate me. I think most Americans, or a lot of Americans, given an opportunity to break down what does the party stand for and do they truly represent you, would say that they do not. On both sides of the aisle, by the way. I think that's actually pretty clear. They don't represent us. They don't seem to be beholden to the constituency. So for all of this talk about us being in this sort of elected, democratic, constitutional republic, we're not there. I don't want to give up on the idea of voting in a national way, but I just don't think that it obviously makes much difference. And until we actually go and do the thing that our 10th Amendment says, until we have some states that stand up and do that, we talked about this last night on our call-in program. I'm going to say it again. Got it sitting here on my desk. This is actually something I may frame and just put on my wall. My favorite amendment now. You people, they talk about the Bill of Rights and what they love most about what our government is supposed to hold back. How about the fact that the founders made a deal with the anti-federalists who were terrified of a overreaching central government that would come in and strip us of all of our actual civil liberties, as we are currently seeing happen, as we've been seeing happen, and this dismantlement has happened for over 120 years. So it's not your fault, no matter how old you are, and it's not my fault, but it is being tolerated right now. And until we can put some until we put some politicians at a state level that are going to go up and remember that this amendment exists. I'm going to read it to you. This is the 10th Amendment. If you guys remember, this is an ongoing theme of the podcast. I continue to beat the same drum. The FBI is overpowered. It represents the teeth of the federal government. Surveillance and First Amendment infringements continue to be a problem under anybody's FBI and anybody's DOJ. It's continuing on. We're seeing it this week. Not great. And the last thing is that our federal government is so overreaching in ways that it should have never been. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. The functional unit of this nation was supposed to be the people, and the functional governmental building block was meant to be the states, hence the United States of America. And yet we act like there's no other way to do it except have a full-on tyrannical federal government, and whoever is in charge of it, that's our guy, so we get to call a win. That's the claim. Mike Johnson put this out yesterday. For a guy who went out there to make sure that we were going to have single issue appropriation bills. If you don't know what that means, it means that the bill would very specifically say funding for fill in the blank government agency, funding for fill in the blank federal requirement. Here's how much money it is. Here's how we're going to allocate the dollars. This is where it's going to go. Yay or nay. We don't even believe that's real. That was what he actually campaigned on inside of his that the public support behind him was for that. And that's what he claimed he was going to do. Never once delivered it. And now he's out tweeting this stuff because he's 100% captured by this nonsense. Washington Democrats are now officially threatening a government shutdown unless they get A, a reinstatement of free health insurance for illegal aliens, B, $500 million for liberal news outlets and other partisan priorities, and C, a massive $1.5 trillion spending hike tacked into a simple CR. CR is continuing resolution. We shouldn't have a CR. We shouldn't need a CR. If you were doing the job of Congress, which would be probably pretty full-time, you would be passing single-issue appropriations bills. Mike Johnson says the American people can see through this obvious stunt. Let me see through his stunt as well. The federal government is not meant to do what it does. And the things that he promised are not there. They are not materializing, and they continue not to. He said, remove me if I don't keep my promises. Some of us know a little bit about keeping promises, to our own detriment, maybe, to our own financial detriment. And I can't help but see this. When I give my word, I go do something. Whether you guys like it or not is another animal. Whether you agree with me or not, that's also okay. You don't have to agree with me. But I can tell you why I'm doing it, and the principles haven't changed. What I do see is that we don't have that same sort of attitude in our politicians, and we don't seem to attract people that have that attitude into politics in general. They all end up the same way, and it's really disappointing. I mean, it's a constant and ever-loving beatdown. You can't trust politicians. You can't trust attorneys. We get told this all the time when you're growing up. I remember seeing that. People would have these jokes, politician jokes, lawyer jokes, right? And then you grow up and you realize, like, yeah, they're based on something, because what else can you do except laugh about how bad it is and how dishonest people end up being? We had people that you want to get behind. They say the right things. We had guys like Eli Crane who were running around in Payson, Arizona and rallying up support. And he gets elected. And he didn't have 5 minutes to meet with me to tell him about the things that he was going to go out there and talk about. Things that everybody ran on. Jim Jordan never once has sat face to face with me. Not once. They're not interested. When I tell you it's theater, it's because when the opportunity exists to find out from somebody who knows what they're talking about, they would much prefer to hear someone who says things that are nice to them. I don't have any interest in being nice to politicians. I'm going to continue to use social media as a cudgel. And it is an easy and a low bar to be an a-hole. No doubt. You can be a complete a-hole. The difference between some people being an a-hole and what I'm doing as an a-hole is this, which was covered by the New York Times. I'm going to quote it from the New York Times story. This is dropped earlier this week. Quote, "Are you really listening to this guy?" End quote. Mr. Driscoll asked, referring to Kyle Seraphin, a right-wing podcaster and former FBI agent who made the accusations against Mr. Meyer. According to 3 people who were briefed on the interaction, are we really allowing him to influence decisions? The podcast is where I talk to an audience and I tell you what I think, and you guys tell me what you think, and we go back and forth in the comments, and I really appreciate it. And it is a sanity tool for somebody who, it is the consistent thing in my life. The social media, which we're going to talk about towards the end of this program, is a cudgel. It is a weapon system that I am bringing in. I don't know that I have the biggest audience there. I certainly don't have the biggest number of followers, and I don't need it. But I'll tell you what I do have. I have some people that read it that definitely take action based on what I have to say. And it changes the game there. Tell me how many people were removed from government service because Dan Bongino did a podcast. I can't think of any. I mean, I was, but I don't think it had anything to do with Dan. No, how many people are actually getting the ear where it goes out there and changes the way that they look? That when they go out in front of a camera system, they're worried about how is Kyle Seraphin going to turn around and point out that I am a fraud or a clown. Because we do that with both versions. I had someone ask me yesterday, how many times did you say something nasty about Chris Ray? Please. You guys can go back and remember it. Chris Ray used to lead the podcast in the intro because he knew so much. He had been briefed on me enough times that when he was asked under oath, he didn't even want to start that can of worms. Are you familiar with FBI agent Kyle Seraphin? Remember? Sheila Jackson Lee, Democrat hell? That was her question. And he said, I'm familiar with the name. That didn't sound like he was real happy about it. This is the second FBI director whose desk I get to occupy space on in a psychic way. Because they didn't fix the freaking problem that always existed out there. And it bothers me. We haven't solved this issue. We got a lot of wrong things going on in this country, but man, if we can't fix the problem of weaponized government, where government decides what the answer is, and by the way, that's a good discussion for this cancel culture discussion that they're having about Jimmy Kimmel. I'm seeing more outrage about a comedian who was making $20 million a year, not being able to continue doing a show that was probably canceled because his ratings were poor. We found out that he was getting very low turnout in the key demographics they were looking for, 18 to 49. He had something like 120,000, 125,000 viewers on an average night, that he had a total audience of 1.6 million, which many podcasts surpass and have far better effective things. And they don't make $20 million a year doing that. And we're crying about him, and we're not crying about a Christian man at 31 years old being snuffed out and his kids not being able to know them. Like he's not going to know his children and they're not going to know him as they grow up, a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. And the news media is pretty one-sided on that stuff too. So that hits me hard. There is a cost to doing some of this stuff. And it's greater or less. There's red and there's white martyrdom, themes of previous shows. For those of you who are interested, the FBI whistleblowers that we were told were made whole, yeah, they haven't been made whole. They still don't have their jobs. You know that? They haven't started working, and they haven't gotten back pay. So they bought their silence. They being Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, this current DOJ, Pam Bondi's DOJ, they all get a piece of it. They all bought silence for $0. Those men got taken off the board. And I'm still here. And you got this old, decrepit man covering for him and polishing the idol because our team is in charge. The same thing as Trump saying that Mike Johnson is the best. None of these people are good to me. So if you're asking, oh, do you ever praise anybody? I sure do. Just people that I know in person. Praise my wife. I praise my kids. I praise my friends. My compliments are meant there. When we're out in public, we're pushing because that's where the information battle is. Because I got guys like this saying this nonsense.
In the short amount of time you've been director, you've corrected whistleblower retaliation, increased transparency more than any other FBI director I've seen, whether that FBI director was appointed by Republicans or Democrats. And I've been around here more than anybody else on this committee.
Yep, that makes you part of the problem there. That's Chuck Grassley, 91,000 years old. He's been around there for a really long time. And what has he got to show for it? Basically a bunch of people that desperately want his attention in a favorable way. And they're really happy to just suckle at the government teat in order to get access. That's what it's all about. Pretty gross. All this makes me kind of sick. I'll show you another sort of thing. If you've listened to Steve Baker, who's been one of the suspendables that's popped on here, I'm going to cover the story very briefly, and I want you guys to look into it on your own today, because I'm not going to cover it too deeply. Ilhan Omar had some really ugly things to say. And I don't think that you should lose your job because of the things you say, but there should be consequences when you say certain things. And if you did have a person like Mike Johnson who had any ability to stand up for himself, who had principles, who was in fact conservative, then he would look around, he would take the opportunity to see the ugly things that Ilhan Omar said, and he would remove her from her committee assignments. That doesn't take her away from her ability to stay and represent the people that she represents. I'm sure she's perfectly representing them. But you saw a bipartisan defense, that's what they claim, of keeping her on her committees. They were going to censure her, and the people that joined her are very interesting. Steve Baker has covered to me that some people have a very, very high probability of voting in the way that you want right up until the one moment when you need them to vote the way that they're supposed to, and they vote something different. And that turns out to be the way real compromise looks like. It's not your people with the Liberty score of 50 that are the most dangerous. It's the ones with a Liberty score of 95. But that 5% are the things that kill the things that should have been done. That would have been so effective. And this is another one of those examples. You guys will be shocked to find out there were 4 Republicans who decided to block the measure, which did not need to be voted on in the first place. It could have been done by the Speaker unilaterally, as I understand it. There are procedural rules that allow this. They put out a vote to hide behind, and the measure was blocked in a narrow 214 to 213 vote. 4 Republicans voted to table the measure for censure, and those were Representative Mike Flood from Nebraska, Tom McClintock from California, Jeff Hurd, Colorado, and Corey Mills, Republican, allegedly, Florida. Just be aware. The people that you cheer on, because there will be people that will cheer on Corey Mills because they just don't know enough. The more you look into any of these people, the less you like them. The more you realize that their campaign promises are complete lies, the more that they are difficult to appreciate. This is ongoing. And how many people have been arrested for political corruption? We heard a lot of big talk. We heard Dan Bongino come out and say, if you're a politician and you're corrupt, then we're coming for you. But are they? You know? Isn't it the do that matters? That's the things I kind of remember. I wasn't the P1 listener to Dan Bongino's show like many of you were, but I certainly listened a lot afterwards because my life was in his hands in some ways. I tied myself into something. There were other outlets I could have gone and spoke to. I chose to go to one who was a former federal agent. I thought that was a place that people would understand what I was saying and that people went there to hear that kind of a message, the stuff on the inside, what it looks like. How many politicians have been held to account since Donald Trump came into office? And how many J6ers were arrested by September of 2021? 500, 600, something like that? It's worth asking these questions because we should measure people by results and the fruits that they have. And those fruits are lacking under this administration as much as any other. It's a speed bump. We're going to talk about folks over at Patriot Protect. They just signed on to support our program for the rest of the year. I'm really grateful for them. If you guys want to go to their website, it's patriot-protect.com/KYLE. Let's talk about it right here. If you guys listened to our interview with Skip the other day, it was on Friday. It is scarily easy and shockingly cheap for criminals and scammers or anyone looking to do you harm to find your personal information online. They call it doxing, but a lot of this stuff is public information. Your home address, your phone number, workplace, family members' names, all can be exposed in a few clicks. The data breaches show that there's even more sensitive information, but the people search websites and data brokers are out there are probably the biggest threat for most folks. They can harvest your information. They sell access to it by making them searchable in Google. They give advertising dollars back to themselves. And then you have constant exposure that puts you and your loved ones at risk. We can see what happens when it happens in real time. People are getting canceled this week because of stuff they said on social media, and people are able to find out who they are. A lot of it comes from these data broker websites. Now, we've seen cancel culture hit people on the right. It obviously is hitting people on the left right now. If you guys are concerned about stuff like that, and you want to make sure that you're scrubbing your personal data from the internet, go to patriot-protect.com/KYLE. This is a 24/7 digital protection system. They are constantly looking and monitoring for your personal data and scrubbing it from these websites, deleting it, and keeping watch for new ones. They're doing the same thing over on the dark web where it's getting sold, so you know if you have to change something. Patriot-protect.com/Kyle. Make sure you use my name at checkout. You'll save 15% off on annual subscriptions. It is inexpensive. It's less than $10 a month, and you just do it one time. You pay for it up front, and then for a full year, you don't think about it again. Give yourself some digital camouflage. That's what you're seeing on the screen right now, sort of digital camouflage. Make sure you're protecting yourself so you don't get scammed. It turns out the government doesn't care about your money. If you do, and most of us do, this is one way that you can protect it. I want to do another story here. We're going to kind of continue on this theme. We're going to get back to cancel culture and all this kind of stuff. But this is another thing that scares the crap out of me. There was a story I wanted to cover, and I didn't actually grab a headline for it. But it was about two young men who committed suicide after having a long-term, quote-unquote, relationship with AI. And it brings me to this story about Larry Ellison. He's the CEO of Oracle, and he's buying into TikTok, which is going to give them unbelievable amount of access to people and stuff that is said. And we already know that TikTok was designed as a spyware app, and like a lot of these social media tools, you're the product. Your data, your location, your behavior is the product, right? So them picking up TikTok, I don't know if that's the win. It's under American control, but you should listen to the ideas of people like this and see what they have to say. And you should decide whether or not it's a great thing. This technology that we have is beyond a lot of our control or our understanding. This is a CBS article. I'll just read a little bit of it. Technology company Oracle is among the consortium of firms that would enable TikTok to continue operations in the United States, a framework deal between the U.S. and China to pull the social media company into U.S. control. The precise structure of the final deal is still unclear, but it will involve multiple companies. It's not clear what level of involvement Chinese firms have. TikTok's parent company is called ByteDance. They will have to obviously relinquish some control, and it's questionable who's going to be able to handle the powerful algorithm. Trump and Xi are in talks about it. This is the worst case scenario. I mean, the Chinese government actually is closer to fascism than a lot of things. I don't know that it's actually truly communism because they have these pseudo private companies that are also doing the bidding of the government, right? It's this mixed bag. They don't explicitly have government ownership. They're just sort of doing the bidding of the Chinese Communist Party. It's interesting that we're going to see very big companies in the US that want to grab it. Kids want to keep the technology. They're addicted to it. And then I'm reading this story about two parents who had to go and testify to Congress about how their child was writing to an AI chatbot, okay? Texting back and forth on a computer as well to ChatGPT and others, and committed suicide on the urgings of the AI chat platform, and were talked out of bringing and exposing their mental illness, their depression, and their spiral into sadness and self-harm with their parents, the only people who really theoretically should care about them. You don't need the government to come in and fix this stuff, by the way, folks. Crazily enough. I think less government control is always going to be the answer, which just means more your control. You should be a parent, it turns out. You need to be a grandparent. You need to be tuned in. All of that can be completely eliminated if you just take screen time away from your kids. It's harder. It's easier said than done. But at the end of the day, if your kid is a teenager and spending a bunch of time talking to a robot and kills themselves, I don't know how you live with that guilt. Because why did they think that AI was the answer? Maybe it's because human beings weren't there for him. This is the CEO of Oracle talking about how many problems they can solve. Again, when somebody offers you a simple problem, last night we were talking about the pharmaceutical answers. Oh, you're fat? Take a pill. Oh, you don't want to eat well? Take a pill. Oh, you don't feel good about your life? Take a pill. Don't do any changes. Don't do the hard work. Don't go and start examining your faith. Don't show up at church. Don't join a community. Just take a pill, watch TV, continue to be a consumer. You know, I'm very uncomfortable when people want to sell me an easy fix. Listen to how easy this sounds. The police will be on their best behavior because we'll be monitoring everything. How could it go wrong?
The police will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording, watching and recording everything that's going on. Citizens will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording and reporting everything that's going on. And it's unimpeachable. The cars have cameras on them. I think we have a squad car here someplace. But those kind of applications using AI, if we can use AI, and we're using AI to monitor the video. So if that altercation that occurred in Memphis, the chief of police would be immediately notified. It's not people that are looking at those cameras, it's AI that's looking at the camera. No, you can't do this. It would be like a shooting. That's going to be an event that's immediately, an alarm's going to go off, it's going to be, and we're going to have supervision. In other words, every police officer is going to be supervised at all times. And the supervision will, and if there's a problem, AI will report the problem and report it to the appropriate person, whether it's the sheriff or the chief or whomever we need to take control of the situation. We have, same thing. We have drones. If there's something going on in a shopping center, and I'll stop. A drone goes out there, get there way faster than a police car. There's no reason for, by the way, high-speed chases. You shouldn't have high-speed chases between cars. You just have a drone follow the car. I mean, it's very, very simple. Securing schools.
I'm going to go to the securing schools in a second. Didn't we see this? Did nobody grow up watching things like Terminator? Did nobody grow up watching things like RoboCop? Isn't that the whole point, that you have to have a human being behind this stuff? Is that not the scariest thing you've ever heard? What about what he just said doesn't sound like communist China to you? I used to get briefings all the time on how difficult it was for intelligence officers to operate in the Chinese space because of the way that they have ubiquitous surveillance, that there are more cameras following every single angle of human life. And then you got guys out there telling it, look, we want to help you. It's about your safety. It might be about your AI chatbot talking your son into suicide, but it also is about your safety. And that's probably what was best for him, I guess. They're going to go out there and fix the algorithms, is what CNN was reporting. The algorithms will get fixed. Sorry about that. We didn't mean to have a couple people killed. When you're making an omelet, you break a couple eggs. What's a couple of individual precious human lives that will never get to realize their potential? We're working through it, OpenAI says. And I don't even put the blame on the technology. I put it on the person behind the scene that is saying, yeah, this is what you need. And then the person behind the scene who didn't pay attention and didn't notice the warning signs of their kid. How do you end up seeing a kid spend enough time, hours and hours, talking to a robot online? Some of you guys are saying that your kids are involved or your grandkids are involved with friends online and relationships and stuff, and they're real people on the other end. How do you know? How do you know it's not some creep in India just waiting to butter them up for pictures of them in compromising positions and then turn around and sell it? How many of you know what the hell's going on there? I am blessed to have grown up in a simpler time. I'm doing my damnedest to make sure that my kids have that same opportunity. It's one of the reasons why my kids don't have a home that we own. It's not theirs. It's the reason that my 4-year-old has been in 4 houses since he was born. Has it been that many? It might be 5, because there are things that are really important. And the pieces like family tend to be one of those things that endures. But all of this stuff seems to cheapen the most important things. And they act like selling you a solution. All you got to do is give up your liberty and your responsibility for your own actions. It's just the opposite of it. I had someone reach out to me yesterday. I don't always do this, but somebody reached out to me yesterday and said, we'd love to get this guy on. He's a professor of rhetoric from some university in Georgia. And he's written a book about how Charlie Kirk trying to Christianize America is one of the most dangerous things that's ever happened. And I was like, go F yourself. This is the same guy that was cheering on COVID masks. Are you kidding me? You really want to have him on the program? I mean, I'll do it, but I'm going to embarrass the living hell out of these fools. We've got to be smarter and better. It doesn't mean that this administration is not incrementally better than the alternative. I think that's obviously the case. But we're seeing right now in this exact moment, because how many people have turned the tragedy from last week into something super scary? It's given an opportunity for people on the right to embrace some of the actual fascistic tendencies that people in power tend to have. It's given people on the left an opportunity to say, look, they're being fascist just like we told you they would be. This is one of those stories. Trump's Kimmel shutdown shows how corporate America cows before him. And I don't even know that Donald Trump had something to do with it, although the words he keeps saying are worse and worse and worse, and it's all egotistical. But the craziest thing is I see a media that is more outraged about a comedian who made $20 million a year losing his job than a father being killed in front of his kids. And that tells me that we're really sick. I'm going to read this story real quickly, too. Corporate America is proving to be a lame defender of free speech. It wouldn't be a problem if our federal government wasn't nearly as strong as it is, for whatever it's worth. The icing of Jimmy Kimmel's late-night ABC talk show, was it a talk show? Is just the latest bombshell moment when firms caught between their profits and suffering through a painful journey through treacherous MAGA politics have rushed to fold. This is Stephen Collinson. It's been a while since we've had him featured as one of the stories, but he does some of the most aggressively left-leaning and bad analysis, I think. It's a tangible consequence of the Trump administration's promised crackdown on opponents in the wake of the assassination of Charlie Kirk. The sad thing is that when you have somebody's death and then people turn around and use it for their own purposes, this is exactly actually what Jimmy Kimmel was talking about. If you guys don't know the clip that got Jimmy Kimmel canceled, he was playing a clip of Donald Trump and he was making fun of him for saying, someone asked him while there was obviously like rotors in the background, there was a helicopter and they were about to fly off. And they said, how are you doing? Charlie Kirk was your friend. How are you doing right now? And he said, we're doing great. Like the construction is going on in the ballroom. I don't know if you misheard him or whatever. But he goes and does sit downs like this on Fox and you get the same sort of attitude. As I understood it, Charlie Kirk was a person of principle and believed that there was no such thing as hate speech, believed that dialogue was the only way. The alternative was picking up weapons. I tend to agree that too. I don't know that we're going to be able to avoid it, but isn't it something? Here's Trump doing a sit down and his last little words here are pretty gross.
Charlie said, that there was no such thing as hate speech. He obviously, no one anticipated what happened to Charlie, but you have always been.
He might not be saying that now, is what you heard him say. It's so simple. So this brings up this problem. It's an AI problem. It's an attitude problem. It's a people farming out their responsibility. It's a people that are checking their minds in. And it goes to exactly the same thing that brought me forward in the first place 3 years ago. What did I see? I saw a government overreach. I saw government destroy its own credibility for institutional trust. It happened in law enforcement. It happened in the medical and the public health side. It happened in the media. And so I thought, shit, is there a way that I can go out there and say things that I think are true and allow people to have a little bit more discernment? Like, can I offer one lens, one little window from a traditionally opaque thing? We're seeing, quote unquote, transparency from our FBI, but all it's done is explode into more conspiracy theories about this guy's death. And very few people in the media end of it are talking about the real problem. We did have a nice little moment last night on our call-in show where one of our listeners was out there standing at a public memorial where folks gathered together and they did it in real life and they weren't doing it on social media and they shared nice words and they reminded each other that gathering face to face is a big deal. I think it's critical. But because of what's happened now and how fast this arms race of AI and social media and all the other kind of nonsensical stuff that's gone out there, here we are. We're seeing explosions of the worst conspiracy theories, both on the left and on the right, from people saying that he's still alive somewhere and he was all in on it, to the people that are saying, oh, there were nation state actors despite no evidence, or everybody's lying to us. When you destroy trust, what you end up with is a bunch of people that are going to believe whatever the hell they want because they don't believe the people they ought to be able to believe. They've proved those institutions lost the credibility, and we know it. Take a quick pause right here. You may hear something from Spotify if you're listening on the audio platform. By the way, these folks, really grateful that Spotify gave us monetization on that. If you guys are listening on Spotify, KyleSerafinshow.com is an easy way to share it with another person if you want to. The monetization there actually is one of our better sponsors. So just so you guys know, if you're sitting through the canned ads, I appreciate it and I appreciate you. Otherwise, you can find us on Rumble, you can find us on YouTube, you can find us on X, you can find us on Locals. Make sure you guys are liking the videos that you're hearing. I want to play you something that I think is truly telling. This is from Senator Kennedy. He's not my favorite guy, Kennedy. He has moments where he's really clever and funny, but he's also, I think, too old at this point. But he did say something that's truly poignant. This is where I named today's show. Saw this before I started prepping. Here he is having a conversation about the cost of being an a-hole in America and how low it is. I think it sums up a lot. And I'm going to give you an example from a hearing for an appeals court judge that says similar things. Worth listening to. Start with this one.
We are enduring a very difficult national moment right now in the wake of the assassination of Charlie Kirk. But you have, like I said, lived a lot of American history. How are you thinking about this moment that we are in now? How do our divisions, how are they the same? How are they different, better, worse than they've been at other difficult points in our history? Can we move through this?
They're worse, in my judgment, at least during my lifetime. I think I'm like most Americans, Casey. I'm tired of the ugly. I think we've lost perspective. There are a lot of things in life more important than politics, a whole lot more important. Your kids are a lot more important to you than politics. My son's more important to me than politics. Here's what happened. Here's what's happened. In part, as a result of social media, people treat others who disagree with them as not just being in error, but in sin. And once you start believing that someone who disagrees with you is evil, then violence against that person that you disagree with can seem like justice. You lose all perspective. Now, most Americans aren't like this, but many are. And many of them, the social media, which promotes this, puts them over the edge. Look, I'm not blaming it all on social media because I believe in free will and responsibility. But there's no denying that social media has lowered the cost of being an a-hole. People say things on that computer they wouldn't say to another human being's face, and it's just become rage bait, and we need to address it. But in terms of how to stop hate, I'm going to tell you something. I don't know whether you pray. I do.
I do.
And when I talk to my God, every single time I ask God, don't let me hate. Because it's hard. We get in the middle of all this, and we have strong opinions, and we disagree. But you can't let yourself hate. And you've got to constantly remind yourself of that. And you know, I don't have any solution except try to exercise some self-control.
That is the solution, it turns out. It's self-control. It's the ability to delay gratification. These are all skills that people learned growing up until very recently. How easy is it for us to go and to believe certain things, and how easy is it us to go get an answer? You know, in my lifetime, it went from go to an encyclopedia and go look it up in a book and try to figure it out, or go ask somebody who was knowledgeable on that thing, to just type it into your phone and you'll be able to find out. How many days has it been since September 15th of 2021? It'll find it for you, right? When did Mike Johnson become Speaker of the House, and how much has the national debt gone up? Boop. 1 second. There it is. $4.37 trillion. In some ways, it's great. But didn't he just say something that was so interesting and so sad? He said exactly what we've been talking about here since this began, which is that the left, the political left, but people on the right do the same thing. I think it's just more common on the left. People have decided that they are going to do moral judgment with politics. They are going to make that the moral framework under which they operate. So they're going to say that if you do not agree with my politics, then you are evil. And when you look at people who are evil, It's much easier to justify violence. How many of us could justify doing some violence to someone that wanted to destroy our family, that wanted to go hurt our innocent children? I can justify it right now. Easy. I go to bed every night thinking about if someone comes in through any of these boundaries that are my home right now, rental though it may be, they have asked for violence, and whatever the ugliest thing that I can do is going to happen to them. Because I've got a little 2-year-old and I've got a little 4-year-old upstairs that are sleeping, that when they wake up, they're the most innocent creatures in the world. So you want to come after them, you're going to get violence because you've done something evil. You've decided to violate the boundary that you must not cross. Now imagine you do it on social media. I'm telling you, I'm not exaggerating. We get somewhere between 2 and 5, me, and it's towards my family and I, 2 to 5 death threats, vague usually, almost never very concrete, and I don't really take it too seriously, but 2 to 5 death threats per week. Pretty common. I'll get emails saying you're next, and an address that used to be mine, or maybe, somehow they found was associated with me, probably from one of those data broker websites for whatever it's worth. They're always getting scrubbed, but some of these guys have them archived. Somebody wants to always go out there and say something truly awful. And why? Because I say things like our government sucks, and it does, and that it's not living up to the promises that we had it. Because I go out there and have the audacity to say that there are people that are in the quote unquote conservative space that are not conservative, that I can look at the actual fruits of their actions and say that this person is a liar. At least to me, they were a liar, and I'll share that. Now, do I sit there and fear that someone's going to come from my family? No, I was in the FBI. I thought that was a possibility at all times. Like, you go out there, and if your job is to go watch bad guys, if your job is to investigate people who are doing things that are antisocial and against our ability to be a safe society, trust me, I've always thought about this. My wife has her own weapons. I have my own weapons. All my children have weapons that they will inherit when they are old enough to be able to handle them. I have access to all kinds of firearms all the time, and I'm constantly honest. Like, I carry a gun to the freaking pool, people. I have a firearm that is within reach when I am swimming in the pool with my kids, because I'm not going to let it happen to them. At least not with it, not without some fight back. But I don't think that's real all the time. And yet it feels pretty pervasive because, like Senator Kennedy said, the cost of being an a-hole is almost nothing. We've removed the physical consequences of being an a-hole because you don't have to do it in person. You used to have to show up at a speech somewhere and yell at somebody from the microphone and then see what happens next. And maybe someone blasts you in the face because you are inappropriate and you are out of line. And today, you got people just ticking away on their keyboard, typing away their little thumbs, sending you whatever their awful bile is. I hope everything bad happens to you. How gross. To pretend like an election solved this. We don't solve it. You know what? I'm grateful that Senator Kennedy said one thing. He refused to say the one thing that most people in government say, which is that we have to fix it at a federal level. We're not going to fix this at a federal level. When I did a whole show called Culture Crusade, this crusade to take back culture is not going to be done by government. There is not a political fix here. There's no political solution. How do I know? Because we've had all the things in there. Apparently, we have all the seats that we have both houses of Congress and we have the White House. And are they fixing it? No. We got guys like this dude talking about how everything is better now. And it was bad under the Biden administration because we're going to frame it as an us and them. It's the same FBI. Who do you think is there? This was from Kash Patel's hearing earlier. I want to play it for you just because, seriously, if this is the attitude, then we know that it can't be fixed at this level. It's going to have to start happening community level again, which that goes back to a previous thing we used to say all the time on this program. Go meet your neighbors. You'll find out they're probably super friendly, your neighbors. They're just people like you. They may not agree with any of your politics, and yet I bet you they don't want to burn your house down. They might say it on social media if they didn't know who you were, but they wouldn't say it to your face. Because once you break that barrier of human beings looking another human being in, they recognize, hey, that's just another flesh and blood human being like me. Imperfect. Ideas that are not always correct. I'm going to give you something that gave me a little bit of hope from one of these confirmation hearings. First, let me tell you that it's not these institutions that are going to solve the problem.
You know, in the Biden administration, we went through a very dark and difficult period of time. The FBI trust was broken with the people. Catholics were, this is the stuff we've been talking about, were labeled radical threats for praying in their churches with their rosaries. Parents at school boards were called terrorists for standing up for their children. Hindu holy men in New Jersey We have the largest Hindu temple in the world. They were attacked. They were put up against the wall with guns to their heads. So it isn't just a Catholic or Christian thing. American Jews were targeted in colleges and universities, and a lot of folks in the FBI, in the past FBI, not this one, didn't give a damn. We can't go back to targeting religion. We can't go back to silencing free speech. The Biden administration did that.
What the hell is he talking about? What do you mean? I covered it on this show a week ago that the FBI in the last 30 days has had active investigations into what they called radical traditionalist Catholics or traditional Catholic groups that were anti-secular in Louisiana, in Mike Johnson's home state. The current FBI, because the same people work there. The same attitudes exist in the middle management. We can't go back. We never went forward. It's ongoing. And then you've got stories like this coming from NBC News. And I tend to agree that this is also awful. Donald Trump suggests the FCC could revoke licenses of TV broadcasters that give him too much bad publicity. That is not the America that we want to be in, folks. The federal government is not a cudgel to be swung like that. And it was certainly not the way, I just read the First Amendment on its face and I don't get it. Here's Trump saying some things. They're asking him about women that are screaming at him. Telling politicians to their face that we don't like them is an American right, I think. It has historically been the case. Hanging politicians or kings, people in power in effigy, you hang there like a dummy that looks like them. It's political speech. It's ugly. It's aggressive. I hope people have a better way of communicating their message, but it's protected. That's what is protected. Angry, radical, aggressive, hate speech. That's the only kind of speech that requires protection. Nobody cares about your yoga routine or your laundry protocols. Those don't need to be protected. It's political speech, it turns out, because the people who founded this country had some pretty aggressive ideas before it started. And most of them probably could have been killed for it.
Mr. President, you said earlier this week that the women who yelled at you, who were protesting when you were at Joe Stone Crab, should be in jail. Do you actually think that that is an offense that deserves jail time?
I don't know how they got in there, but certainly I thought it was very inappropriate. They said things that were and it was a question of when you take a look at the way they acted, the way they behaved. Yeah, I think they were a threat.
And you think that deserves jail?
Do you agree with it?
I think they're a nasty organization.
But you think they deserve jail?
Well, I don't know.
Even the discussion that we should be able to stop people for words that they said. If it doesn't hit the true threat, which you guys can go back and watch some old American radicals since they're now off the air and they no longer can talk. I don't like it. I'm the receiving end of some of this stuff. Not as much as others, but certainly more than many. And it's just the cost of doing business. And the answer to it is never going to be like a federal hammer or coming in with a governmental regulation agent. Isn't that the exact same thing that we had that we said we didn't want on the other side? Now, look, the other option was also equally terrible. But the answer is not build up the weapon system. It's not build up the government institution and then say, yeah, it's ours now. Now we've got the biggest gun. No, the answer is dismantle the gun so if they want to come back in and get it, that they have to build something from scratch. Take away all that stuff. We saw it yesterday. This mean, stupid attitude of trying to do tit for tat back and forth. Let somebody else play it. The people who take the high road win. But they have to take the high road with also some real actions. I'm going to remind you of what the alternative was, simply because I'm not operating in a vacuum. I do remember that the Harris administration, if that had been a real thing, if it had been able to take the election in November, would have been seriously, seriously flawed and dangerous for me. I voted transactionally in the last election. Wasn't thrilled. Donald Trump is not my favorite. Never has been. I've never been a MAGA influencer or whatever the hell they said, pro-Trump influencer, as the New York Times said. Not once. And anybody who's listened for this for a while knows. But I'm not opposed to giving him the wins that he has. And I'm also not opposed to calling out the bad ideas, like censorship is not a great idea. Obviously, the other side was clearly worse. And they would have done bad things to my friend Steve Baker. They would have done bad things to the whistleblowers. They would have continued on in a bad way. And Garrett O'Boyle would have never gotten any resolution. Granted, he still has not gotten it yet, but I'm hopeful that they will exactly pay him since there's a deal that's been inked out. This apparently is a commentary on a book that Kamala Harris has put out. And Kamala Harris was negotiating in, I guess, bad faith with her own ideas that she wanted to have Pete Buttigieg. So she wanted a failed mayor of a small city that was unable to do not much as her vice presidential candidate. But she didn't think America could handle a gay vice presidential candidate. So she went with Tim Walz. The humor on this stuff is not lost on me. This is a little CNN discussion about how, like, what the first choice looked like. Again, this is why I think it's the time to push on Republicans, because Republicans are not conservative, but they could be more conservative. And we allegedly have somebody as the Speaker of the House that claimed to be. He said he was conservative. So if we're not holding them accountable to that, we've lost an opportunity. And I don't want to lose much more of it, but let's talk about how bad it could have been. So this is just a good reminder.
Last word, Scott. So you couldn't pick Pete Buttigieg because he was gay, but you could endorse taxpayer-funded sex changes for minors. I mean, honestly, and then you pick Tim Walz. There is not a single political operative alive who believes that Tim Walz was a good choice or helped the ticket. Pete Buttigieg would have been a far superior choice. And the idea that you're going to go blame it on that now shows just how unfit she was for the presidency in the first place.
All right, Scott. You know what's sad is his analysis is probably correct, that Pete Buttigieg was probably a better pick than almost Sergeant Major Tim Walz. Isn't that something? That's how sad and silly the other side is. That's what happens when you let yourself be dominated by ridiculousness. So this should be the opportunity where the team that actually has the ball right now does the good with the ball instead of just kicking it back and forth. What we almost see is no scoring. We see no rolling back. We see no, where's this? Here's my picture. This guy's missing. We don't see single issue appropriation bills. We don't see reining in of government. We just see bigger government, but it's our government this time until it's not. That's not the answer. And by the way, I don't think the political solution is going to get there. So I've got this. This was actually really heartwarming to me. This is Rebecca. I think her name is Tableson. Tableson. I hope I'm saying that correctly. She's a nominee for the 7th Circuit right now. She, I think, was just confirmed yesterday. I've got to double check on this. I just saw this clip and I realized I like the message. And there's been this back and forth on whether or not she's conservative enough. At the end of the day, she's a woman who worked through, the raising of her children. So I don't know that makes her the most conservative person in the world. But her message here about politics not being nearly as important also echoes what Senator Kennedy said. And it resonates with me today, especially. She talks about the things that, there was a time not too long ago when this was not an issue, that you could be friends with people who didn't agree with you. I would like to see more of that in this country. I think that would be the thing that Charlie Kirk never grew up with because of his age, but that's the thing that he seemed to be pushing towards. Can we not be people who disagree in good faith? You should be able to even be in a household with people like that. It means you got to get rid of the religiosity behind a lot of politics. Tell me if this doesn't lift your spirits a bit.
Absolutely. Thank you, Senator. Let me say, I guess, 2 things. First, I was raised by a very conservative law professor sitting right there. And, it has stuck. We were actually, I went to a Jewish day school, and I think it felt like we were the only conservatives at our Jewish day school in the 1990s. Especially back then, if you were Jewish and conservative, you had to really mean it. And we did. And my parents raised us to be proud of those beliefs and to be proud of those differences. I think my service in the United States government has been fully consistent with those values. I have obviously been a prosecutor fighting violent crime. I have prosecuted human traffickers, meth traffickers, international opioid dealers, corrupt city employees, armed robbers, carjackers. I think that work is consistent with my values. We also, turned our lives upside down to move to DC with 2 3-year-olds and an infant, so I could serve in the Solicitor General's office in 2019. And in that job, I did work that I'm very proud of, and it was consistent with my conservative values. The second thing, I guess I'll address, Senator, is I know that a lot of the concerns are about my husband, and it is true that my husband and I don't agree about everything in politics or the law, but my husband and I do agree about what it turns out are more important things in day-to-day life. We agree about devotion to our children, our religious faith, love of this country, devotion to public service, deep relationships in our local community, and that is the stuff of day-to-day life. And I was raised in the best tradition of Charlie Kirk, to relish debate, prove me wrong. And so we do have, law and policy debates, but it works for us because we have so much else in common. And although I'm quite certain my husband is wrong on many matters of policy and law, I love him very deeply, and we have a wonderful family life.
Shouldn't that be the thing that matters? By the way, I cannot find out whether she was confirmed or not. It looked like a whole slate of Trump-appointed judges were recently confirmed, but I can't find out a list of what that is, and I missed the story on it. So don't hold me to account there. This woman has been a contentious nominee on the left and on the right, and a lot of it comes down to what her husband thinks, and then people on the right worrying whether she's going to be conservative enough because she lives with someone who is significantly more liberal. There was a time when politics didn't make that much difference, and husband and wife's politics were not relevant. And if you have someone in your house that doesn't agree with you politically, but doesn't also make it a religious problem, if they can hold, constant the things that actually do matter, I actually think that she's probably right in that case. And that might be a fairly contentious position. I guess we'll see. We'll see if they actually push her through. It's interesting to see that your spouse and who you chose to live with is going to be something that changes whether or not you can be professional. Most of you guys don't know anything about what my wife thinks other than what I say. She may not think any of those things in reality. She does, but you don't know that. It's just an interesting time to see that we've put so much of ourselves out there. And again, I think this is because of social media. It's because our need to be commenting on things. That cost of being an a-hole is so low. There are people who probably think that Kyle Seraphin is like the meanest guy walking around and is constantly negative. And if you've ever met me in person, most of you know that's not the case. I actually laugh about almost everything, including when the New York Times calls and asks me something that would be otherwise kind of not very nice to talk about. There's that. I'm going to end it here today. It's, like I said, it's kind of a heavy day in some ways, simply just because of the date and the fact that this 3 years has been an awfully long 3 years for me. And I don't think we're even close to done with this, whatever this is. I hate calling it a battle or a war, but God, it does feel like we're fighting for the war of what the soul of the nation, as Joe Biden said. He wasn't wrong. He was just wrong about all of his ideas of what needed to be done to fix it. So let's do something that's a little bit fun and a little bit more like lighthearted, which is what we always do here at the end of the show. Before we do, Spotify, KyleSerafinshow.com. Share the link with somebody that you know. Have them watch something. Maybe not this one if this is a little heavy to start with, but send it to them. If you guys want to join us on Locals, you can get behind us as a paid member of the community. You can be a free member of the community. There's lots of stuff over there. Lots of different things being posted. KyleSerafin.com. And, if you're watching on any of the video programs, make sure you like the video before you're on. Make sure you've subscribed if you're interested. We're about to hit 14,000 subscribers over on YouTube. I think we've tripled the number that we've done in total subscribers this year alone. I really appreciate the folks that are joining on there. It's awesome. And, I think a lot of it has to do with folks that have given us a platform. A lot of people have. I'm grateful for the platform. Doesn't mean I always agree with them, but I will debate them in good faith whenever it comes up. All right, let's do something that makes us smile. We need it. How about this guy? Men, you guys know what I'm talking about. Your women are always out there trying to do good things for you, even when we don't agree, kind of like what we just heard Rebecca Tableson say. Women, what are you trying to do? You trying to keep us alive even though we're trying to do bad things for ourselves?
So my wife's been trying to keep me alive. And that's been pretty frustrating. She heard me talking about how many energy drinks and how much Diet Coke I drink every day, and she thinks my heart's going to explode. And she said that she'll miss me because she loves me. And I think really she just doesn't want to have to put the kids to bed at night because that's my job. She rules the day and I rule the night, and she doesn't want to have to do both shifts. And she can't do 24-hour shifts because she's union. They won't even let her. So I agreed to cut back on the caffeine, and I was fine with that until yesterday when I had to go running uncaffeinated. I woke up in the morning, I drank water, and then I just went outside and went running like an Amish person. I used to think I loved running. You put on a podcast, you got a cute little outfit, maybe a little caffeine, and you're flying. Turns out the caffeine was doing all the work, because when you take that away, I hate running. Mm-hmm. I hate running so much. If somebody yells fire, I want to know how much fire is there and how hot is it? And what are the chances? Because I'm not going to spend the last 30 seconds of my life running when I could just be having a good time one more time. So if you love something, let it drink as much energy drinks as it wants. And if its heart explodes, it will be waiting for you when you get to heaven. I hope this helps.
It's a good reminder. Yeah, if you love something, give him energy drinks. Let him have some caffeine. I don't know what this guy's whole deal is. He's obviously he does like these Instagram comedy bits, but they always hit me nicely. He talks about having a household full of daughters and hiding in the garage. Men, we can all appreciate this stuff. Anyway, go out there and be easy on yourselves. We don't have a Sunday sit down. I'm going to work. I had a couple options, but they were all kind of fell through for this week. So we'll get one going again very soon. And maybe go for a run, or maybe don't go for a run. Maybe just go hang out with people you love and enjoy that for 30 seconds before the fire engulfs you. God bless you guys. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. I look forward to seeing you after the weekend.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram @Kyle Seraphin.